rule of law. Secondly, participation. And thirdly, democracy. We think that in our side of the house, those values and principles are better achieved. Why? Firstly, because we think that if law applies to everybody, as I was telling you, everybody should be able to challenge it. Why? And why? Firstly, the constitutionality of that law. Basically, because the constitutionality of that law means the coherence it has with the principles and the values that my system has. So basically, what my system and my country is looking forward to. So basically, if that is the thing that is being incoherent, it means that the law itself is being incoherent with what my country wants and what the social contract that I did wanted to in the first place. Because constitutions are the social contract itself. They are going against what the values and the principles of that country were in the beginning. But secondly, we think that they are they have legitimacy in order to ask for these kind of plaintiffs. Why? Because breaking the law or being incoherent with the law is not only affecting someone who's being harmed, but it affects the system itself and how the system is worked upon. Why? Because basically a law being broken or the constitution not being followed means that the system and the balances and counterbalances that the system itself has are not being complied in reality, and basically the basis and the whole way the system works is failing. And why we think we are not overstepping in these kind of situations? Firstly, because in most constitutionality plaintiffs, we're not asking for reparations, we're not asking for someone being sent to jail or anything like that. We're just asking for a law to be taken out of the judicial system, or a law being better interpreted by the courts. So basically, we're not overstepping because we're not asking for something that is going to benefit just us, but it's going to benefit the whole population. So basically, we don't think that individuals will look for plaintiffs that will just directly benefit them. So secondly, why we have a better justice and legislation in our side of the house. So firstly, why we think organizations work better in our side of the house. Firstly, because they can materialize better their objectives. So basically, we have organizations that look forward to helping people like go through their plaintiffs and help people use, because organizations are not going to have to wait for an individual to look for them or to find that individual, but they're going to use that know-how when they think they need to do, and basically they're going to use this know-how when they see that there's a problem with constitutionality. But thirdly, why we have a better access. Firstly, basically we think organizations are less likely to answer to negative insights such as bribes or fear or anything such as these things that happen in reality that individuals do answer to. So basically, these organizations, as they have a broader base, they're not as likely as individuals to answer to this kind of these kind of incentives. So we think it's better if organizations can work up and fight against a government that is enacting laws that are not constitutionally right. And second, we think that minorities are better represented in our side of the house, because maybe what happens in reality is that minorities don't have access to a good legal advice. Minorities right now, even they don't understand what are the implications of the laws that are being enacted, so they don't realize that maybe their rights are going to be harmed and their rights and violations of these laws are going to harm them, so they just realize when the harm is being done. We prefer a world in which organizations can work better in our side of the house to work and to protect those minorities and help them do those plaintiffs even if they have not been harmed. Jorge is going to explain better why individuals have better incentives to find better their plaintiffs, but secondly, why we have more possibility of being protected even if you're an individual. Firstly, because you don't have to wait for damages or an imminent damage. We think that right now in most of the countries the system is worked up with a lot of plaintiffs, so if I have to wait for an immediate damage or a damage itself, it means that I am already harmed. In our side of the house, I don't have to wait for that damage to be real or to be immediate. So basically, I'm more able to protect myself from that government that in the first place should have been protecting me. And secondly, we think that judges in reality are less likely to give you the plaintiff if you have an immediate damage damage because of the huge burden that you have to prove when the damage is immediate. We prefer a side of the house where you don't have to prove damage, but just the incoherence in the constitutionality system. For all these reasons, proud to propose.
We thank that speaker and invite the leader of the opposition. Here we go.
This one. I wasn't about to go over this. I just want to close this one.
First of all, I deal with the material brought by the opening opposition. Then I'm going to elaborate a little bit further on the material Juanita already brought to you. And in the third place, I'm going to bring an extension on how we get better juridical decisions in our side of the house. So first, the material brought by the opening opposition, and please note on the first hand that the entire case is based on minorities against majorities in a minorities against majority context. Our case deals with that and engages with the context of a given minority, but also deals with the fact that not only minorities can actually challenge the constitutionality of a law, but rather any individual, even if this individual makes part of the majority, the white majority, black majority, or anything. The entire case is only based on minorities. But so the first thing they say is that we have other alternatives, right? So two things to know here. First of all, those alternatives aren't preventing damages or preventing harms, right? They are only given once the harm is already been present, or once the harm has already harmed the population. So we think that our alternative is actually preventing damages. But second, it's not exclusive. And for example, Juanita didn't say that we were going to ban protest and else. We think that, for example, this can also happen in our side of the house. But third, we think that the protests that are going to be happening in our side of the house could be, for example, enhanced by the fact that the majority now sees that, for example, someone from their majority challenged the law, and that it's not like an exclusive challenge or an exclusive claim to the minority. So we actually have more chances of solidarity in our side of the house, because people can now see that, for example, the claim that the minority has, it's not exclusive to the minority, but that someone from the majority actually challenged that, or anyone challenged that in the first place. The second thing they say is that, for example, this leads to a greater harm. Second, I'm going to repeat myself right here. It's not preventing anything in their side of the house. But second, this is mainly harmful because sometimes and often the harms that are done by an unconstitutional law are something irreversible. So we think that we have to make any effort possible in order to prevent harms that could be irreversible. They are doing absolutely nothing on the side of opposition. Secondly, in the third place, they say that, for example, this should be an exclusive right to minorities, right? So in the first place, this clashes directly with the principal argumentation Juanita gave you, because if you're challenging a law because it is unconstitutional, it is because it attempts and it attacks the main values of our society. So we think that it's not an exclusive right of the minority, because it's actually challenging something we all believe in, because it's challenging participation, it's challenging human dignity, and we think that therefore everyone is entitled to make this claim, because maybe the specific harm is only affecting a minority, but the abstract attack on our juridical and social system is harming anyone. So therefore everyone should be entitled to make this claim, because everyone is being attacked by these specific claims. Second, we think that, for example, the fact that we see that only minorities have an exclusive right to make these kind of challenges only seems to worsen the fact that we see a context in which we see, for example, minorities attacking us as a majority. We think that in our side of the house, solidarity is enhanced because we are sending a message that says that anyone can protect the minority, because anyone can challenge the law that attacks the minority, not only the minority even being left alone to challenge and protect their rights. We think solidarity is enhanced on our side of the house. And in the fourth place, they say that, for example, it will be controlled by the most powerful, right? So first of all, in the POI, Juanita already brought to you the example of how this doesn't happen, because mainly the decision is in either side of the house, being given by a judge that will, in either side of the house, for example, protect the minority, or for example, don't protect the minority. So we think that this specific harm doesn't happen because the majority isn't deciding. The fact is that, for example, the majority decides when the Congress is deciding. We think that the Congress is a scenario where the majority could actually impose herself into the minority, whereas the juridical system, it is a judge, is a more, comparatively speaking, equal place where actually a judge, a progressive judge, could, for example, recognize the rights of the minorities. But right now, being done with the material brought by the opening opposition, I'm going to elaborate a little bit further on what Juanita brought to you. So in the first place, we talked about participation, right? We didn't hear any response or any efficient response as to why this, for example, wasn't enabled participation. We think that, on the other hand, it enables more people to participate. And why specifically challenging a constitution is important? If we see that, for example, democracies are based on checks and balances, right? Everyone controlling everyone. We see that, for example, the fact that anyone can challenge a law that a president is promoting in the Congress or that a Congress is promoting is something that empowers any citizen in order to check and balance the big structures and political structure we have right now. Mainly because if for example, anyone is entitled to challenge a law and get, for example, promoted by the president, we're seeing that anyone is being able to check and control the biggest authorities in our political system and not being able, for example, or not being complied to wait until the next elections in order to make this control, but actually being able to control the president and the Congress as they work during their term. So we think that even if we're talking about participation and materializing the values of our democracy or the constitution, this is checks and balances, we still win in our side of the house. There hasn't been a response to this. Second, Juanita explained to you basically why this enables a better, comparatively speaking, justice system by organizations and by individuals. We think that even if, for example, if you're an individual right now and you're not being harmed by the law right now, but you think that this will harm you in the future because maybe if it's a healthcare law, you may lose your job or actually lose the money later, you're also entitled to protect yourself in advance. How? By challenging a law that you see that could be harmful in the future. We think that any citizen, even if it's not a minority, is entitled to this claim. But now the minorities want to give you structural reasons why minorities in the comparative may or may not, for example, in OO's world, have access to this kind of help. We think that, for example, it'll be way easier to have access to judicial help by minorities in outside the house because we don't have to wait, one, to the harm to materialize itself, or two, to finding someone who has been harmed in the realities. We think that, for example, we can say that organizations that can actually think in the future will not have to wait this, but actually prevent this anytime it happens. Second, we think there are better judicial decisions being made on our side of the house, mainly because in OO's case, all the context or all the juridical burden has to be proven individually speaking or proving harms or individual burdens. We think that if the Constitution is general and the Constitution, for example, is kind of abstract and should be, for example, applied to everyone, we have better juridical decision and reasoning in our side of the house, because in our side of the house, when I don't have to be a direct plaintiff or a direct harm by the law, I have to make arguments that can be applied anytime, anywhere, to anyone. We think that because I don't have to prove an individual burden, but a collective burden. I don't have to prove that the law actually harmed me, but that the law is contradictory to the Constitution itself, speaking in values. We think we have better decisions because now the reason won't be this law harmed me, but actually this law is unconstitutional because it will harm anyone, anytime, or because its values or the values it defends are actually harmful to the Constitution and the social contract. Because we actually engage with the minority, because we actually explain why any individual should be entitled to this, because we actually explain how to have better justice and a better justice system, we think we win this debate. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So it's only them. Everybody else is fine.
From CG, we don't exactly believe that this debate is about where are minorities better. We believe that this debate is about the importance that constitutional rights, values, and principles that OG was talking about are better in reality, and how we have the possibility to have a society in which people are able to fulfill those specific values and principles and rights that are specifically in constitutions. First, some rebuttals to the to OO. We believe that most of their harms are not mutually exclusive with the case they're bringing you, meaning that those people that are directly affected by the unconstitutional law can still continue to appeal those specific laws, specifically in our case. Mainly what's going to happen with those specific people is that they are going to have a better plaintiff in that specific court because they have a direct damage. Those who do not have that specific damage have even a greater burden in terms of proving how this could damage others. In reality, we are going to explain to you how we believe this is better for those specific plaintiffs that this doesn't happen. But taking into account that, we note how this is even difficult for Republican Party to appeal specific laws they believe they're not good in reality, because they have a greater burden to specifically prove how this may affect other people in reality, or how this is incoherent with the Constitution. In reality, it's going to be even harder for them to appeal those specific laws to maintain their political interest. But first, we are going to explain to you who makes laws in reality. We believe that these laws are directly made by Congress, meaning political parties directly, who have specific political interest to maintain themselves in power, meaning satisfying sponsors. In reality, for example, this is highly the case with the Republican Party in the United States, where they tend to have laws that satisfy specifically those economic groups with them, but also mainly they tend to have populistic views of reality or populistic interests to satisfy those specific voters to maintain themselves in power. Why do we believe this is highly problematic? In reality, we believe that this means that we don't necessarily have laws that are going to respect those specific values we have in the social contract in reality. For example, what happens even if that specific law doesn't make a direct harm in reality to people, it's in contradiction with those specifically constitutional values in reality. For example, the tax cut that Republicans passed through Congress last year, in 2017 directly, what we see is directly that even if it doesn't create a specific harm to a specific population, meaning that in their scenarios no one is going to be able to directly tell that law is unconstitutional, in that comparative, we see how in our world we have the possibility to explain to a judge how this law isn't taken into account in terms of the constitutional values we have in society, such as the possibility of being in equal terms in reality in taxation, for example, directly. Why do we believe that this is problematic and our world is better? We believe that our world is better because we have the possibility to attack those specific laws that we believe are not directly related with the society we have structure in reality in our specific constitution. But why do we believe this is directly important? We believe that mainly we have a better representation, not only in terms of those specific minorities, as my opening was telling you directly, but also other groups that, being in the majority directly, are not being represented by those specific political interests that move Congress in reality. We believe that that specific world is better because they have the possibility to attack those laws. They feel they are in the same way of the constitutional value. In a second way, we believe we have a better accountability in terms of how specifically we have the possibility to tell people that the laws that Congress is passing in reality are not directly related with the Constitution we want. They told us that in their scenario, what happens is that the Supreme Court justices are selected by the Republican Party or by the Democratic Party, and they also have political interest. Yes, they may have political interest, but they still have to give a sentence based on the specific constitutions and the values that already exist in that specific constitution. And a 10th panel that this is mostly a minority case. In most of other countries, it exists even more check and balances when they select those judges that are in constitutional courts or in the Supreme specific courts of justice, meaning that in most of the cases, those specifically political interests don't exist in reality in most of those specific countries. But why do we believe that this is a better scenario for people, and why do we believe that people have that specific incentive? Because even if people is not directly harmed, responding directly by they told us that we weren't proving directly how more people is going to be interested in those specific things. We believe that in that comparative, we have the possibility of those people who in reality don't have an actual possibility to do so. For example, humanitarian groups that in reality aren't able to find that specific person that has the harm directly, but also the possibility of them being directly better represented in reality. But before I continue,
if the law is truly that bad, your politicians have the potential of losing more voters in the future. Why then those alternatives to protest, it should be justified taking away the airtime that minority have to appeal its case?
No doubt, even if that's the case, we are submitted of those political, we are still dependent of those political interests in reality. In most of the cases, Republican Party had the possibility of enacting bad laws in reality, but even after that, we still see they have the majority in the upper house of Congress directly. For example, even after this midterms election directly, we see how even if the law is bad, it not necessarily means that people are able to acknowledge that that law is bad. We are giving the possibility of those who acknowledge that the law is bad, to appeal it in reality. Note panel how we have proven to you directly how specifically these laws are made in reality. And this is really important in terms of how this directly attacks the opening opposition case, in which they don't really explain to us what's the specific harms of other people directly having the possibility to do so. But note that we were the only team that directly responded to the fact that mainly politicians have the possibility to change in Congress directly, and even if they have the possibility to change, they still have political interests that make them do bad laws in reality. In our world, we have the possibility for those people to fulfill and protect the coherence with the social values they want to enact in those specific scenarios in reality. We believe that by this specific scenario, we have a better accountability in terms of how people want to see their own society and are not dependent on political interest, but also we have a better representation of those who don't have representation in Congress right now. For all of those things, proud to propose.
We thank that speaker and invite the member of opposition. Failure.
Opening opposition talks about the efficacy in court and about how it provides check and balances, right? But we will play in our worst case scenario, even if in the outside of the house there will be no judicial activism, for example, if this minority is not represented through law, we think our changes will still be will be better. Why? Because understanding in the outside of the house, the one that will fight for this kind of minority is NGOs and social movement, for example. That this social movement will have to divert their focus from exactly helping and giving affirmative action towards this minority, for example, or lobbying the parliament and trying to make organic changes within the society. Right? We need this divert and focus will exactly provide only an unsustainable changes that we champion organic change in our side of the house. We will change the society mindset and we change the structure slowly from the parliament, for example. We think that this kind of changes is better and more sustainable, right? So first issue then, why our change will be more sustainable and they hamper the organic change that will happen in our side of the house? Because firstly, let's engage in closing, right? Closing says that lawmakers and judges are biased towards a certain group that they only, for example, provide those who are rich. But firstly, we have that bias as access in your side of the house too. Because judges, for example, are still going to be biased in your side of the house. Then how are you going to win the court if the judge is biased, for example? That the parliament is still against you. That the parliament will make another discriminative law even if you win, for example. That this is not sustainable at all. Even if you repeal one law, that there will be another law that replaces it, for example. That this is very bad because in their side you will only fight on this, right? But secondly, we think that they constantly bring that constitutional, that this kind of law need to be constitutional, right? But we think that it is bad because their only basis is constitution. That their basis is not about protecting people, for example. That it can be used both ways by the rich guys, for example, or by the conservative too, for example. That about when there is a law about protecting gay rights and gay marriage, for example, that this conservative white people, for example, can say that this gay rights is not constitutional, that gay rights is not in this second amendment, for example, that this is exactly harmful because it is easier for you to just prove that gay rights is not constitutional rather than proving that this gay rights is harming and affecting me as a human being, right? That this means that their open standing can also be misused and abused by those who are oppressive. But going to our exclusive contribution, because about the organic change will be better, right? Because firstly, in their side of the house, they are dividing all of the focus and resources by these NGOs and social movements. Because for their benefit to run, they need to focus entirely on hiring good attorneys, for example. And this is very expensive. They need to cover the court fee that is very big, right? Because court takes a very long time. That it takes, for example, 5 months to get just to the Supreme Court, for example. And in the Supreme Court, you need to take another 3 months, for example. And that this kind of process is exactly taking all of our resources from taking all of our resources towards this kind of jurisdiction thing. But we think that what way is the comparative better in our side of the house? Because you stop their ability to give help towards the black community, for example, that you want to protect, equipping them with the skills, the opportunities, the scholarships that they need, for example. You stop their ability to campaign to get the popular support so that society will accept the black community, for example, and fight for them too, right? That you stop all of this ability to lobby the parliament, so the parliament will actually fight for us. We know this is bad because it is not an hand with organic change. And their side is not a wise use of resources because even in their best case scenario, let's say that they win the court, right? That their benefit is very marginal because when one law is repealed, for example, let's take the example of anti-immigration law, that you repeal this anti-immigration law, for example, that people are still against you, that nobody still wants to nobody will want to hire you as an illegal immigrant still, for example, that you are not protected, right? There will be still a disadvantage because the parliament still don't want to give you citizenship, for example, that you still cannot get citizenship. That, for example, another law can be made that is also discriminative towards you, for example, because the parliament is exactly still against you. But there is no real benefit towards this kind of minority that they want to protect at all, even in their best case scenario when they win this law, when they repeal this bad law. Right? But secondly, why our side of the house is better? Because we rely more on the organic change. We think that this is better because we want to empower this minority. That we make safe house for this illegal immigrants, for example, that we protect them from ICE, right? When this kind of thing means that we can give them skill, that they can work, for example, be empowered, so that society will no longer think that they are that way, that the society will actually think that they are useful for the economy, for example, that the society opinion will shift, right? That we lobby the parliament, for example, we lobby the Democrats and the Republicans to further represent our forces. That this will change the root of the problem, not like in the side of the house when you only change the surface. That we ensure that no other bad law against these illegal immigrants can be passed, that this protection will be very sustainable. That we ensure that there will be follow-up, that there will be affirmative actions, for example, there will be better, easier green cards for this kind of illegal immigrants, for example. That this kind of thing will only happen in our side of the house. We propose a better, more sustainable changes. Yeah, outsourcing.
Directly, no panel has never respond to the fact that exclusive benefit that we have is that we have the possibility to protect those specific values without having a harm that exists in reality. Meaning that everyone in reality have the possibility to protect what they believe society is in reality by the Constitution without having a specific harm.
Why is this constitutional value is more important than protecting those illegal immigrants who are not getting their rights, for example, who are persecuted? We have this kind of protection is better, that your principle cannot run with practicality, that this minority can be protected, and this minority can have a sustainable rights that we protect in 50 years, for example, that they will still get the protection, right? But second issue that, why legal fight will be better so also in our side of the house? Because firstly, we need that you cannot say that, for example, just because one law is unconstitutional, that it is, for example, a very bad law for everyone. Like, because understand that law is not a black and white thing. That, for example, increasing the premium of insurance and healthcare, for example, you might think that it is a bad thing, for example, but it is it might be a good thing because it increases the quality of the healthcare that you are giving towards the poor people, for example. That these poor people doesn't have to, for example, queuing so much long over a very long time that their life cannot be saved, for example. We have this kind of thing means that in our side of the house, in the side of the house, your harm will be purely theoretical, that you cannot surely know that this law is bad or good, but you reveal it anyway. Secondly, even in the case that it is severe enough, I think that legal fight can also happen in our side of the house. Because, and it has a bigger likelihood for success. This is what we think from opening, right? Because you portray yourself as the victim, that society will more likely to empathize with you. We think that this is a better thing, because judges also think about the popular support, that you are more likely to win out of the house when you portray yourself as victim. You are proud.
Alrighty, we thank the speaker and invite the government to take it.
The reason why the opposition loses this debate is because they has never proved why their mechanisms are mutually exclusive. What happens in reality, and the government has to prove in order to win this debate, is that we guarantee a better future and a better quality, for example, for the generality of the population. What they're defending, for example, is that minorities are going to be harmful, and now I'm going to begin to rebuttal the closing opposition directly. Firstly, they say about how, for example, this process is taking out a lot of resources. First, why this negative? They have never proved that. On the comparative, even when we accept that these take out many resources, we believe that in the comparative we have a better trade-off when at least, for example, we have more people fighting for their fundamental rights and for the basis of a national, national basis, that just in the comparative taking out some resources that we believe are completely irrelevant in this debate. Second rebuttal for them is that, for example, the parliament is not going to be able to give some benefits for minorities, for example, migrants, or for example, affirmative actions. This clashes directly with the extension that my partner was saying. Why? Because we are proving in this debate that specific dynamics of the parliament are not as they work. For example, we already told you that political parties have specific interest, and somehow we are the only team that we are able to show you that this is a type of balances and check and balances between the branches of power. Therefore, if we empower citizens in a judicial system, we are directly balancing the parliamentary branch that is being co-opted, for example, by a specific interest of the political parties. Therefore, the parliament, and for example, how this can benefit some migrants, first, is not mutually exclusive. This can be a tool to fight for rights, but actually it's a better tool for the parliament and for the judicial system when we have even better resources to fight for, but just one branch like the parliament one. Now, why, for example, they say the legal side is better? And they have to, for example, benefit the poor, the society, and how the society is more empathetic. If we analyze and we accept that the society is empathetic, that's in our side of the house. Why is important in this debate? Because if they are saying that the society is empathetic, this means that the society is able to understand, for example, a little bit those minorities to fight for them. It's not like the minorities are just alone and the society cannot fight for them, but actually because of that empathy,
empathy, they are able to be conscious that someone is being hurted, even if I am not part of that minority, and even if I am not the one that is affected. That is why we have a legal better system in our side, because we believe that society not always works alone and just work by minorities, but they can co-work in order to fight for some rights. Now, I'm going to rebuttal the opening opposition. First, they talk about how we have to prove that the other alternatives are good enough. This directly engages with what Fernando was telling you, because we already proved that the other alternatives are not good enough, talking about the dynamics of the parliament, how they work nowadays. But also, where in the comparative do we believe that the minorities are better heard? When we have even more impact on our side. Why? Because we have more quantity of people demanding for some rights, because we have more pressure on the media. Why? Because more people is demanding on the same topic, because more amount of people is saying this is being hurted, this is being hurted, and not just the directly implicators. This means that on the comparative, our minorities are also more hurt in our side of the house, because we have more people claiming for them, but just not the minorities. Also, what happens many times in the minorities is that they are not always able to sue, for example, because they are afraid, for example, to sue, because they don't know how to do so, because they have some structural problems in order to demand their rights. What happens in this scenario is that on the comparative, we also have the minorities to be heard, because we understand that someone is fighting for them. Like, for example, an NGO that is telling, even when I am not poor, there are many poor people that need to be defended, and this is an extra tool to empower people openly.
Under your work, the parliament passed a law that against the majority, for example, principle, why then the majority will have the interest to kick up the minority when they also have the problem that you told them?
For example, as I was telling you, an NGO that fights for the human rights, that fights for the poor, is not only going to fight for their own interest, but for the interest of the population, because that directly will involve its own vision as organization, its own vision as human being, because I just don't want to protect myself, I want to protect the other ones, in order for all in generally to have better rights. What happens in their side of the house is that the generality of the population is also being protected and is also being benefited, because we don't need a precedent in order to act. Now, I'm going to say why do we win this debate. First, we win this debate when gaining the opening government, because the opening government has taught us about, for example, how the organizations have more coherence, how we better democracy in terms of participation. But what we as closing are saying is that specifically we don't need a person to be harmed, but we have causes that harms everybody. Hernando was telling you specifically how issues like, for example, taxes does not affect just one person, but affects the generally of the population. Therefore, we have proved you that there is no necessary to have a direct harm in order to act. But secondly, and most important, we have proven why making laws is important nowadays, and that is because there is a strict contradiction in laws and constitution. This type of contradiction is not only fought by the parliament, but is being able to fought by other alternatives like the judicial power that the citizens may have. Why do we win this debate? Because we were the only team able to prove you that no matter what happens with the other alternatives like the protest, like the parliament, etc., this is an extra mechanism that can be exclusively to the people to have the power and to hurt what they really want to gain without having interest inside. They have not proved why this side is mutually exclusive. We have proven exclusive benefits, helping the general community and also the minority.
All right, we thank that speaker and invite the opposition to appear here.
provide us lack of characterization in what kind of constitution are we doing in status quo, in what kind of practical harm that this constitution might be harmful. Is the harm actually already happening, or is the harm is actually going to happen in the future? I think that is the biggest mistake of government bench, thus all their cases is rather confusing, right? But second of all, this debate is not talking where power or people who are getting harmed are a lot and individuals who directly get harmed is also a lot. Because if that is the case, that they will no need to use open standing, just simply reappeal, right? Those mechanisms exist. Indeed, in the side of the house, they need to prove the exclusivity in which probably they could win in this kind of reappealing when they are not directly affected. I think that is something that is harmful and never been proven by all government bench, right? But lastly, I think the clarification will be to closing the government, because they want to argue like political parties and politicians are all dumb, are all bad actors. Notice that that is not the case, because politics, politicians and political parties happen in a spectrum. It means they come from a lot of individuals' background, they come from a lot of interests. That is why even if Democrats and Republicans is two biggest parties in America, there's still small parties that will protect you, even if you're just from small communities. It means they need to show you more likelihood in this debate, right? Two things in my speech. First of all, why it is okay to sacrifice some part of democracy that government bench want to talk about, right? Because they want to argue to you, like, look, it is not okay to breach democracy and reappealing when you're not part of it is actually part of democracy, right? Do understand that true, that reappealing is also your rights in democracy, but it's not the only rights you have. You have right of voting, you have rights of becoming a politician, you have rights of many things, right? But second of all, government already limit your rights anyway in democracy. Minimum age of voting, places you can do protests and so on and so forth. What is the conclusion of all of this? There is a certain limitation government and democracy need to put, and limiting Plaintiffs Act is also one of it. Why is that the case? Because it balances the power in status quo in order to make a greater good future, in order to make a greater good objective, right? Why is that the case? Because in their side of the house, what they're going to take is only increasing the problem of process in which government probably need to take a certain part of policy in order for government to make a certain part of decision, right? That's why in their side of the house, probably you don't want a closing direct border of Mexico, increasing tariff and so on and so forth. We say what happened in this side of the house is probably you're going to make this kind of policies become freeze. Because the moment you appeal to a plaintiff, that is the moment the policy is not going to be passed. I think that is when the harm is going to happen. Because in their side of the house, indeed you are going to prolong the harm, right? Prolonging the harm of economy declining, prolonging the harm of increasing like individuals' criminal rate and so on, later on, right? What is the trade-off that later on, the trade-off that we are willing to take in our side of the house? Okay, we probably don't have a lot of constant check and balance, right? But it is okay. Why is that the case? Because that is for a greater good. The reason in the side of the house, people want to appeal and becoming all these individuals that want to appeal, even if they are not plaintiff, exactly because these individuals are not used to the fresh law that government is trying to take, right? Whereas this fresh law is probably important, like closing the border of Mexico, like increasing all the check and balance in the border, or even using tariff and so on and so forth. Those are the necessary measures that we need to take. In their side of the house, what you're going to make is instability of economy, also insecurity. Why is that better in our side of the house? Because in our side, in the future, you are going to have a better sustainability income of your country, giving like all of this stability of economy, right? That is why democracy is not just about your rights in short term, but it's also a sustainability. In their side of the house, what you're going to create exactly reappealing and reappealing again without necessarily having a solution. Second thing, why minorities will better off in our side of the house? Because that is the big intake of all government benches. They want to protect minorities, and solidarity is coming from the majorities helping minorities, right? But do understand that solidarities to minorities is not only expressed this kind of plaintiff. There are other mechanisms that opening opposition might talk to you, right? But why in this side of the house you're going to make it worse? Because number one, it's very uncertain whether this NGO or individual is going to pass this kind of plaintiff, right? That is what my member brought to you. It's a long process in which probably you need to show a lot of argument. You need to show a lot of evidence, in which probably you need a lot of things to be proven, right? Things like very tangible. What is the ground proof of economic imbalance to that minorities? Or what is the data in which statistically show that minorities is being harmed in order for you to also help the minorities? What is the harm of this? I think the harm is immense because this NGO will have a double focus. In which right now this NGO wants to directly help these minorities on the ground, but they also need to allocate money in which to go towards this reappealing. I think that is the moment where the help towards NGO to these minorities will not be productive. Closing.
in that specific moment, we see how coherence is better for those specific people inside society. Those people are going to fight in terms of how they can prove some specific damage is going to happen, even if the law directly doesn't damage someone in that specific moment.
The sad truth is the coherence that they want to prove in the side of the house need to have a utilitarian value. It means they need to show what is the value of it, what is the possibility and feasibility in which they can pass this kind of things, right? The harm in the side of the house if they cannot prove that they are right, that is the moment this kind of expose of resources will be allocated towards something that is very uncertain. What is the harm of this, right? The money that previously need to be given to make more hospital or houses for probably immigrants, for probably these black people who are living in Bronx area, or probably individuals who don't get education, become shifted towards all this process of court without necessarily giving any benefit, right? That's why this is an exclusive contribution, because in their side of they want to ask the exclusivity, right? This is mutually exclusive because the money of this NGO and individuals are very limited. These individuals need to distribute that very goodly, right? In their side, we're not going to have that. Okay, let's take your best case scenario. What if they success in one cases? I think the very harm of that is you're having lesser money to help other cases, because that is the one you're going to splurge a lot of money and lesser ability to help other individuals in which living in the different spectrum. Even that this NGO not only sold in one country, probably this is Greenpeace helping people in indigenous area because that area is having a lot. But this Greenpeace also need to help other people living in other countries who also have other problems, right? In their side, this kind of community or this kind of NGO have lesser incentive or have lesser resources in order for them to help other people, right? What is the conclusion of this? We say it is okay in certain way to repress some rights because you have other way and other options and other alternatives to express that kind of rights. But democracy should be balanced in which you ensure that there's a future long-term benefit in order to say